We are on our last day text for the letter of First John. I want to thank all of you for joining me this morning and all of you who've joined me since the start of our reading in First John. After today, we will have read the entire first letter of John. And if you've been following the readings, then I'm sure like me, you've benefited tremendously and gained a better, closer understanding of the text so that you can make more sense out of the early Christian congregations' relationships with each other and with God and Christ. That's what we're trying to cultivate today, the same thing. That's why we read these texts. So we're going to finish up 1 John today, and then we'll move into 2 John tomorrow. So let's go ahead and begin. I should point out, you've all been hearing me talk about the Toy Story 4 garbage dump, and you know at this point I'm doing a review of Toy Story 1 through 4 trailers. That will be up today, jaw willing, but I have found some stuff that is very disturbing. And I was not expecting to find some of the things I found. I figured, I'd find your typical garbage or hidden symbols and imagery involving 5-pointed stars, 8-pointed stars, 6-pointed stars, pyramids, as above, so below, all the stuff. That, we don't go to the movies for those things, but they're so common now that they're not really surprising to me. I just look for whether or not they're being open or trying to hide them from us or not. But what I found in some of the Toy Story trailers goes beyond just hidden symbols and imagery. So I highly recommend you take a look at what I upload today on the Toy Story 1 through 4 Hollywood Garbage Dump trailer review, because I did not expect to find what I found. And I don't think you expected to will believe it's there. And I don't think any of us, obviously, noticed it when the trailers came out. And there's a reason why. The very disturbing images I'm talking about are hidden in among this very quick TV static shifting scenes. So I had to slow it down and really look at it. And within 2 seconds, there are so many images. I highly recommend you review my Hollywood Garbage Dump review today when I upload it, because I just think that in addition to the typical garbage, you're going to be a little bit shocked, maybe a lot shocked, at some of the other things I found. Oh, man. Well, hidden symbols and images, of course, anyone who's trying to hide something from you in plain sight is basically trying to familiarize you with it without you knowing it. So in other words, if you're repeatedly shown 8-pointed Ishtar stars in association with events or things or people that you are sympathetic with, then subconsciously the idea is that you'll become sympathetic with Ishtar, or those who use the 8-pointed star. That's just an example. But everyone knows, at least if you've studied it, that subliminal imagery can affect the mind. And that's why they use it. They use it so that they can submit into your subconsciousness images in association with people, events, or storylines that you will then begin to associate in the same way. And then your guard is down, you see. Now you're more open to Ishtar and the 8-pointed star. That's the last thing you want to be open to. That's Jah's enemy. These are not good gods. They're not, the people worshiping these gods aren't there to help you. They're there to influence you without your knowledge, hence the symbols, and steal your money at the same time by filling your mind with things you didn't really go there to watch. Well, maybe you did. We don't. So that's why I do the Hollywood Garbage Dump reviews. Take a look at Toy Story today. I think you're going to find, and I'm going to highlight in the video the ones that are really, well, you'll notice them, but you'll be able to tell by my commentary that I'm showing you the ones I'm talking about now. Some very disturbing images. Okay, back to the text. So you have that to look forward to today. Let's finish 1 John. And we'll start by reading verse 18. We're going to read verses 18 through 21, and then this will conclude the letter of 1 John. All right, let's see what we got. Verse 18. We have come to know that each person who has been born from God does not continue doing what is wrong. Now remember, John opened up this letter by telling us if we have no sin, or if we say we have no sin, we're a liar. So he's not talking about making mistakes. He's not talking about even occasional wrongdoings. He's talking about people who continue to do what is wrong. In other words, you're not trying to stop it. You're not trying to change. You're continuing to do it without any kind of struggle or difficulty resulting from your warring with your desire in the flesh. Okay, that's what he's talking about. Someone who has now accepted and continues doing what is wrong. Okay, so that kind of person has not been born from God. Rather, the one born from God closely follows him. And the wicked one cannot touch him or cannot engage him. You see, because why would the wicked one knows if he goes to this person, to you or me, well, we're prepared to speak God's name. We're prepared to teach the things Jesus taught. And unless he's just really clever and lies extra specially much, we're going to recognize he's not who he pretends to be. He knows that. He knows we know him better than most other people. That doesn't mean he can't still get to us at times. But if we closely follow Jah, he's not going to be able to get to us. He can try. It's just not going to be permitted. If Jah does not permit it, it's not happening. This is what people of the world fail to understand all the time. They think it's just some big dumb accident, right? It'd have to be dumb, right? Because it's not, accidents aren't smart. Well, maybe they're not dumb either, but they're nothing. They just happen or don't happen. And it doesn't even make sense because you'd have to have all the things to happen accidentally to form into all these things. It gets ridiculous. So we know that God exists. History shows us that God is Jah, and his sons at times follow him and at times do not. As a consequence, their first physical creation of human beings in their image has become disrupted, so that some of us are born from God and others are not, in ways that are demonstrated, manifest by the things we do or continue to do. Right? We make mistakes. That's not the problem. We've been born into that condition. But we don't draw attention to our mistakes and say, well, hey, come over here, check this out. Look at this mistake I made. This is awesome. Let's keep going. No, that's what they do, right? They make a mistake like penetrating their anus instead of their natural sexual organ. And then they say, oh, check this out. Let's videotape it. Let's keep going. Let's destroy this rear end. And then have our body get destroyed because we're coming into contact with human waste, but all the stuff. So that's what it's talking about. People who can look sodomy in the face and keep going. They don't care. They know it's not a normal sex organ. They know the anus isn't meant for that. It's a human waste excretory organ. Science, physiology, anatomy, biology. You pick it. The text will show it. Okay? Yet, we know that people today, they choose these ways that have no appreciative value, no beneficial value, other than the simulated climax that you get from having sex the normal way. But you could get that by humping a light socket, as long as you don't electrocute yourself. My point is, it's not about the similarity of the climax. It's about the damage you do or don't do while you're doing an act. And in the case of sex, there are people who continue doing what is wrong. We know that. It's obvious. They're just allowed to do it. It's legal, but it's still wrong. So then there are those of us who don't do that. And even if maybe occasionally we got caught up in some act or thing, we don't keep doing it. We don't promote it as the way to be. And that's why the wicked one can't touch us. He can try all his dumb agents. They get so frustrated trying to stop us. And, oh, why can't we do that? Because you're following the wicked one. And if Jah doesn't let him or you do something, you do nothing. Okay? You are not in control. You're out of control if you're following the wicked one. And that's why what you want to do usually will not happen. Because your desires are evil and you're not trying to praise God like we are. So even us who try to do those things struggle at times. You wicked people who have given yourselves over to this corrupt lifestyle, and you think this is all just a big joke and accident, and you're trying to steal as much as you can before you die and give it all back up. You wicked people who think that way are retarded. Okay, I mean, you've really lost your minds, because if you can't conclude based on the evidence we have today that we have been created, and if you can't conclude based on a review of our history that this world was transformed by the flood, and that places like Eden, Sodom and Gomorrah, and all the other places and events in the Bible are true, then you haven't studied these things very closely. And you're just speaking nonsense that other people have taught you. So the wicked one and those people can't touch us. They can bring up all they want. They can try. Not going to happen. When Jah says it's time, that's when it will happen. So in other words, the wicked one and the wicked people are totally controlled. They can't do anything unless Jah permits it. Well, that's exactly what we want, right? He permits all kinds of things for us, and we love it. So he also allows for many wicked things, of course, because the world has to be judged and we have to be tested. And that's why it says in verse 19, we have come to know that we are from God, and the whole world is set in place or lays down with the wicked one. And look at them. Look at the way the world is embracing Satanism, Luciferianism, sodomy, all this grotesque stuff that has no positive value, does nothing for humanity, blasphemes God, the one who made us in the first place. So they have nothing. All they do, and the only thing they have, is the opposite. Reverse everything. Since we're too stupid to come up with anything better than Jah, because there is nothing better than Jah, we'll just reverse everything he's done. We'll just take the opposite. It's like going as far over to the dumb side as you can, right? It's not like just a little bit different from Jah. Let's just reverse the right way 100%. Or 180 degrees, right? That's their vision. That's their great work. Reverse everything. So dumb. Verse 20, we have also come to know that the Son of God has come. As opposed to all the other sons of God who came down before the flood, abused women, abused men, all while their father was watching them. Unlike them, the Son of God has come, and he has given us an understanding in order that we may know the true one. By being with his Son, Jesus Christ, we are with the true one. This is the true God and unending life. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Final verse of our reading. Children, this is the last thing on John's mind. You must keep yourselves away from idols. When we look at idols in the world today, we have them everywhere in all kinds of churches for whatever reason, right? You go to a Catholic church today, there's idols all over the place. You go to a Protestant church today, there's pretty much idols all over the place. Crosses, pictures of Jesus. Those are idols. Nowhere in the Bible are we told to use those things. If you feel you have to wear a cross to maintain your faith, that's between you and Jah and Jesus. We're not told to do that. Why are all these churches including all these idols in them? It says right here to keep yourself away from idols. The Catholics go so far above and beyond violating this text. They violate calling other people father. They violate forbidding people to marry. They violate using idols. I mean, how many texts do we need to see so flagrantly violated before we recognize that we have a real problem today with Christianity? We have so many false prophets, false agents of Jesus, and they're not really hiding it. I mean, they're like right out in the open, huh? With all their attire and their idols and their teachings that have nothing to do with the Bible. We have to be cautious. And we have to make sure that we let other people know we're not like those Christians. It'd be nice if we were all in the first century today and we could just say we're Christian. That's not going to happen today without massive confusion or you explaining things that you can convey through a simple modification of the term that the Bible uses, like we do, Christian Witnesses of Jah. Call yourself whatever you want. We use that to identify us as the promoters of three things above and beyond all else. And so our objective is clear. And if you want to join us and do those three things and you don't want to call yourself Christian Witness of Jah and just Christian, great. It's not about calling yourself a name. I do that so I can make clear who I am and what I believe, in contrast to other Christians that I don't believe are promoting the correct beliefs and that are in fact promoting the opposite. Instead of promoting keeping away from idols, they're promoting idols. Instead of not forbidding to marry, they're forbidding to marry. Instead of not calling other men your father on earth because one father's in heaven, they keep calling each other father. That's just three basic texts. We haven't even gotten into the Trinity, all that stuff. So we really need to be cautious today. Stay with these texts. They will tell us what we need. These are Jesus' first century followers, his closest disciple or student. Now let's take a look at verse 20. So there's often this confusion about verse 20 in terms of who it identifies as the true God. I don't think there's any question. It seems very obvious to me just based on the terms in the sentence and also by comparison with the other things Jesus wrote that John recorded, like John 17:3. Right? This means everlasting life. He uses the same two things there that are used here. Everlasting life and the true God. Although there he says, you are the only true God to the Father. So the question there is, let me just read the note because it uses terms like the true one, and there's two antecedents at times, of course, Jesus and God. You have the same thing in 2 John 7 with the Antichrist, however. So let me read the note that I put in the text below because I think it does explain things clear enough. Note to 5:20, the true God and unending life. Or if a reference to God into the Word, then I would translate this is the true God and capitalize never-ending life. So the question I'm pointing out there is the never-ending life in association with God the same as, for example, we read in John 5, where the Father has life in himself and he gives it to the Son? Or are we looking at the true God and the Son who now has this life in himself, so that the Son, the Word, is basically called never-ending life? Very similar to what we read earlier in 1 John. 1 John 1:2, that the eternal life was in the beginning with the Father. The unending life. Not eternal, always going backwards, but eternal going forward. So, excuse me, that eternal life was with the Father. 1 John 1:2, and here he's with the true God. Same one he's talking to in John 17:3. Let me read the rest of my note. In the first part of 1 John 5:20, we read, the Son of God has come and he has given us understanding, in order that we might know the true one, in Greek, ton alethenon. This involves a clear distinction between these two, since one, the Son of God, gives us an understanding of the other, the true God, or the true one. Ton alethenon. It doesn't use theos in that reference, but it does later in this text. Further, the true one, back to the note, in the first part of this verse, is clearly the most natural antecedent for both the second use of the true one and for the true God. In other words, you have true one, true God. So it's very natural for all of those to be referring to the same person, who then is associated with unending life, zoe aionios. just as Jesus associates unending life with the only true God in John 17:3. The reference to his Son is about as decisive of evidence as one can point to in this verse, 1 John 5:20, for applying the true one, ton alethinon, to the Father. It is only natural then to view both ha alethinos theos and ton alethinon as the same individual, the Father. If, however, the last part of this verse, unending life, is really a title of more fixed significance for Jesus, then we have both a reference to the Father as the true one, true God, and to the Son of God as never-ending life, capital N, capital E, capital L, which may also be the case in 1 John 1:2. You can take a look at that text. We read it as part of our day text readings, and you can also look back at our video on that as well. So this text is often translated incorrectly to make it seem like Jesus is the true God, which even in our view isn't a problem because the only God Jesus could be is the true God. He says so in John 14, if you've seen him, you've seen the Father. Who's the Father? The true God. But it's not that you've seen the Father, right? No man has seen God at any time. John 1:18, John 14, 1 John says it as well. It's that Jesus is showing us the Father in everything he does and everything he learned and heard from the Father. There is only one true God, the Father, and the sons of God have an option, a choice. Be their own gods, like Satan, or be the Father. Do everything he does, everything he says, and you can speak and act as him. He allows that. He shows us that repeatedly in the scriptures. Why? Because you're not being some other God. You're being him, the true God. Not for your glory. Obviously, if you were doing it for your glory, you wouldn't be being some other God. You wouldn't be being some other, you wouldn't be being God as someone else. You'd be being God as yourself, like Satan. They surrender that and give all of the glory they could have to the Father by accepting his teachings and ways as the best. So they only do what the Father does. Jesus most and more so than anyone. So we don't have a problem referring to Jesus as the true God because the only God he is ever is the Father, not himself. He's not standing as some separate God in comparison to the Father. He is exactly the same as the Father in every way. He's just not the Father. So it's the same with the other sons of God. That's why Jesus himself said that if he called those gods in Psalm 82 gods, those sons of God gods, then it shouldn't be a problem for acknowledging him as the Son of God, who is also a God, which is what the Jews in that text in John 10 were accusing him of. We know that because of the way Jesus answered them. He didn't answer them with a text that applied texts about Jah or just God in an unqualified way to him. He applied the Psalm 82 gods text to the situation because he's the Son of God. I hope that helps you understand this text better. And again, you have my note to the text. Also, if you want a more in-depth discussion of 1 John 5:20 and the grammatical issues surrounding it, you can get my second edition of Jehovah's Witnesses Defended, in which there is an excursus on Granville Sharp's rule and texts pertaining to it, one of which, even though it's not an exact Granville Sharp text, one of the texts discussed in that section is 1 John 5:20, in addition to different arguments presented by Daniel Wallace over the text. So I highly recommend, if you want more information on 1 John 5:20, particularly in the grammatical discussion, get my second edition. You can get it for like $14 on the Elihu Books website in a PDF, and you will have the full discussion of issues involving all of the grammatical aspects of the verse. Outside of that, I hope I was able to give you some clarity so that the text makes sense to you and you understand, because isn't that what we were given right? Trinitarians and others create confusion and misinterpret texts, all to adopt a theology that was later put forth in order to understand Jesus' relationship to the Father and monotheism. But Jesus came and gave us the understanding we needed. Not the 3rd or 4th century councils of various later Christians. Verse 20, we have also come to know the Son of God has come, and he has given us an understanding. Okay? Of what? That we may know the true one. So why would we need later councils and creeds to explain for us what the Son of God came to us to teach? I don't believe we do, and I believe those creeds and later expoundings of texts only confuse the texts because the texts are clear, and they're really all that we need, except for a few occasions or instances where there's some difficulty due to the time that has passed. But there are few, if any, that can't be really credibly explained and translated. So we really have no excuse. And we really don't need to look to anything but these texts to teach us what we need to know in order to serve God and follow Jesus. That's 1 John. That was great. I really enjoyed going through that all with you. And I think you're going to find that even though 2 John and 3 John are much briefer, they also contain very important information that often gets overlooked because, they're just brief letters tucked into the near the end of the New Testament. And people just, there's so much other material, it seems like texts like 2 and 3 John often get ignored. But I think you're going to see as we go through them following this day text, I think you're going to see that there's a lot of good information in those 2 little letters. So I look forward to starting that reading with you tomorrow in 2 John. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, I have the Hollywood Garbage Dump review, Toy Stories 1 through 4 coming today. Some disturbing things that I found. I highly recommend you take a look. Tell me what you think. But I did not expect to find some of the things I found. And as you know from reading my prior Hollywood Garbage Dump reviews, I'm prepared to find quite a bit. But this one, this surprised me. And I think it might surprise you too. So I hope you'll all take a look at that video when I upload it later today, and that you'll join me again tomorrow for another day text as we begin the letter of 2 John.